Violence against women and girls is one of the most prevalent human rights violations in the world. Yet, it is shrouded in the culture of silence. Which is why today on the show, we will be talking about gender-based violence and the way in which it undermines the health, dignity, security, and autonomy of its victim. To have the discussion here in the studios with us is Mrs. Ipoponlua Oteshile, who is the founder of OSEC, and of course she is also a human rights activist. You're welcome to the studios.
Thank you very much.
Now, when we talk about gender-based violence, now talking about violence against women, against girls, why does it look like recently there's been talk when we say people are talking about it, but again it looks like people are not talking about it. Why do we have so much secrecy, so much silence when it comes to gender-based violence?
Well, permit me to add that a lot of times when we say gender-based violence, we always forget a group, and that's the boys. You know, when we see girls, it's actually women and children. Violence against women and children. Actually against any minority group. You know, once somebody is from the place of advantage or power, authority over another that seems to be at the place of some form of disadvantage or the other. So let's always, you know, find a way to put our boys in, because they are children also. And you know, back to what you've said, it's such that for so long a lot of people have not had the opportunity to talk. And of course, that's why we have it look as if it's increasing on a daily basis. Of course, it is increasing. Now, when people do not have consequences for actions, then they will continue to have field day. They become more bold, you know, with the steps that they take. So when we look at gender-based violence, is like you said, it's something that should concern all of us, you know, as a people. Women, children, girls, yes, because a lot of times they seem to be the most vulnerable. Yeah, but we need to come together and begin to look at how we can protect our children. We need to come together to look at how we can encourage a lot of people to talk. Yes, people are talking about it, but we're not talking about it enough. You know, and that's why it's good that you're coming in to talk about it. I keep saying it, that the media needs to get it. It has to be like a frenzy for the media. The media really needs to get in on this, because there's still a lot of ignorance. The level of ignorance of people, both male and female, young and old, is devastating, is disturbing. You know, so it means that we still need to continue to talk about it. Some people might have said, yes, in the last 2 weeks, there are about 3 weeks, there's been a lot of noise about it. And I say, no, the noise is not enough. It is not loud enough. We need to begin to talk about these things, because it looks like it is our culture. And every time I hear that, I say that it's culture made for man, or is man made for culture. Yes, so we're talking about it, but we're not talking about it enough. There are other areas that we also need to bring to the table. We need to look at our roles as a people. We need to look at how we raise our boys. I say it every opportunity that I have. If we have this number of men abusing women across board, gender-based violence does not just mean sexual abuse. It also means assault. It also means neglect. It also means, you know, deprivation, emotional, economic. You know, it's just when you infringe on the right of a person because you're in a place of authority, or you put a person at risk, you know, in one form or the other, yes, then we bring it under gender-based violence. So it's not just the sexual abuse. So what we're saying is, if we have this number of men that are actually perpetrating this act, should he not tell us that something must have gone wrong when they were boys? So it means that we need to begin to go back to our foundation. We need to go back to what we project as a people. We need to go back to our essence. Have we not lost our essence of humanity in the process of civilization?
Okay, now let's, of course, you already mentioned that gender-based violence it's not just about sexual abuse. I mean, it's a lot of when you deprive people of their rights. It includes child marriage, female genital mutilation, what have you, any acts of violence against persons of against women and of course children, any persons of vulnerable group. It is regarded as gender-based violence. Now let's look at our law, because now we're talking about this. Recently, in the past 3 weeks or thereabout, there's been, of course, the whole world knows that Nigeria is stepping up when it comes to fighting gender-based violence in the country. Now, in a way, is our law giving room for people to perpetrate some of this violence?
Well, the good thing for us in Oyo State is, of course, because Nigeria is a federal system, you know, so states have to a large extent some autonomy, and that's why it really looks like as a people, as a country, that we're joking when it comes to the fight against violence, you know, against violence against children, abuse generally, because in some part of the states of the country, it is unheard of, or it is now a crime for you to for you to contract child marriage, you know, because that comes under abuse. But in some other parts of the same country, it is still acceptable. So it becomes that, all right, so my child is safe here, and then something happens, I get taken to the north, and then the safety of my child comes into question at that point. You know, so we have that to actually put in mind when we begin to look at this issue. So yes, it's not just sexual abuse, just as you have said. It talks about economic abuse. It talks about also emotional abuse. Now, Nigeria is coming strong at this time because of the social media. Our laws are such that, you know, your state, I keep saying it, like the Violence Against Women Act and the Child Act law has been has been domesticated in Oyo State. So we're really privileged in we're not the use of word privilege. We're doing good. Like, we're in a good position. Yeah, maybe I should say that we're in a good position in Oyo State because there is an instrument. You know, so our law does not allow perpetrators to continue. Now, our culture of silence allows perpetrators to continue, because the truth about it is, if our laws are not tested, there is no way that we will see the loopholes in our law. Before, there was no statutory rape. Now, but you know, when the laws were tested, some cases have come out, and you know, the instruments available could not cover. Then they began to think of, okay, so what can we add to it that can cover these other areas? And then statutory rape came in, you know, issue of consent came in. You know, a lot of things began to come in. So at that point, you don't say that it's not our law. We have the law in place. We have the instruments in place. But the law cannot by itself act. Now, people need to come out to report when there are cases of abuse. And if we do not have that happen, and that's one of the major frustrations that CSOs, as NGOs have had, or we're still having. Even the police, I was listening to a program on the radio, and you know, a law enforcement agent that was talking raised it also as a concern. That's one of the problems. People do not come out to report. So is it the law? I would say no. Yes, that doesn't mean that the law is the best as it should be. But you know, we can't even begin to talk about improvement when we've not started using. So yes, the law, the justice system needs to be on their game, you know, to reduce all the time lag that usually is involved when you bring a case. The case can go on for years before you eventually get judgment and all of that. Yes, we have that in place. We might have that as a challenge. But beyond that, let's even come out of that and test these laws. Just as, you know, we try to make the police accountable. We try to make the SAS, the civil defense, and the rest of them accountable. Now let's also make the justice system accountable. How do we make them accountable? When we come out and report, and then we can use the media to say, no, this case has been going like this, has been going like that. But the justice system has always been hidden behind. And so they can, you know, they can continue to get away with some things. So yes, the law has its power, but I think more on our part of silence.
Okay. Now, but why do you think that people prefer to keep quiet and allow perpetrators go away?
Well, there are a number of reasons. Well, yes, there's the cultural part of it. There's the stigmatization, that happens. And with what had happened in the recent times, we see a lot of people had actually called for a head on a plate. A lot of people have continued to say, sometimes I hear questions like, in fact, there was one very disturbing comment, and it was that, was she a virgin? And the next thing was that the first time she was having sex? Did she not enjoy it? And these are questions that don't even come to play. Now, if somebody of that status could be subjected to that much of ridicule, now somebody of no status as such, how do you expect that person to view that? So that stigmatization is really a major concern. Two is also lack of knowledge, ignorance on our part. Because a lot of times we just assume, for instance, we say, let's keep it in the family. Forgetting that as long as we do that, we assume we're saving the family. It's like penny wise, pound foolish. But we destroy the family, we destroy the society. So that's also part of it. People don't talk because of stigmatization. People don't talk because they're not informed. They don't know that there are cares that that they need to get beyond litigation. I keep saying it that, yes, it's important you talk for litigation to happen, but that's not the only reason why you should talk. You should talk or speak up because you need medical attention. That's why let me mention it. Yes, we keep saying that it's important that between 24 to 48 hours, 72 hours, that you get post-exposure prophylaxis to HIV. Now, because you cannot guarantee the status of that's for rape, if it's, even defilement, really, because you cannot guarantee. I don't think there's really a lot of them use condom. I don't think so. But you can guarantee the status of the person. And so we say that if for any reason that has happened, if it's rape, particularly in cases of rape, within 24 to 72 hours, please present to the hospital. Now you need to get to the police first to be able to get to the hospital to get that injection or that medical intervention. So it's also part of the reason why you need to speak out. Again, you need to get help that goes beyond just going to the hospital. There's need for counseling and all of that. So I think it's because a lot of times we're not informed. We don't know the effects that rape can have, the psychological effect that it can have on our children. Because I think if we know the danger that we put our children in when we keep them in silence, then maybe really it would change our perception about wanting to come out. And that way we can change the cultural views or perception that if once a girl has been raped, she would have difficulty giving birth, and that would affect our suitors, the suitors are coming, or she'll be looked at as, as a wayward child and all of that. So those are concerns that people have. That's one. And then majorly, you see, rape and defilement is actually a traumatic experience. And that's why I pulled the government into it. I keep saying it that we need to have a one-stop center. We need to have a care center. Because, and we need to go up in time, scale it up, and begin to consider using forensic, science for investigation. Nobody likes to recount experiences, negative experiences or traumatic experiences. So now the victim has to recount to the person that saved him or her. That's the first experience. Then you get to the police station. Then you have to recount that story. Now, while you are recounting it, another officer comes in and then, what happened? Who is this? Well, she starts that story again. Now the civil society come on board, the NGOs. She recounts the ordeal again. Now we get to the court. The lawyer that's going to get involved. She recounts the ordeal again. Now the media comes in, they want to get in on it. She recounts the ordeal again. Now each time she does that, she's re-traumatized. And so that in itself can be so hard for the person that has experienced it. She just wants to forget. He or she just wants to forget what has happened. Now, but when we have a one-stop center, a place where everybody is there, it's like, it's a big place and all of us have offices. The police desk, the civil defense desk is there, the labs are there, the civil society NGOs that would offer psychosocial support, they are there, everybody is there. Then the forensic investigator is there. Now, that one experience or recounting that ordeal will be one and enough for all parties or stakeholders that might want to be in on the case. Now, when we're able to protect the victims more and not re-inflict or, rehearse their pain, then we would also be able to have a lot of them come out to say this has happened to them.
Okay. Now, talking about having to recount some of those experiences, how traumatic does this? Because you talked about educating people and keeping people informed. How traumatic is violence, assaults for people of for the female gender and the vulnerable groups. Because again, you did mention, just to quickly tell our viewers who are watching, the case she's talking about, and of course the case we're using as a case study, is the COSA scandal. That's the case between Pastor Biodun Fatoyinbo and Busola Dakolo, and which is of course has been on the social media for a long time. There have been that has led to a movement in Nigeria, the Me Too movement, where a lot of women have come up to recount their rape ordeal by persons in authorities, persons older than them that they look up to. And we've discovered that a lot of women have been raped at a younger age, and it took them years to come up to talk about it. And again, they're talking about it, the way people are reacting. Again, sometimes it calls for questioning, as you did mention, people asking different questions. So how traumatic is the experience of assault and abuse? And now again, considering that recently a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria again has been accused of assaulting a nursing mother, and well, he has apologized, but recently a Senate panel was set up and he's saying the Senate cannot threaten him, please.
Suspension.
They shouldn't threaten him with suspension. I mean, he has apologized, and the people should move on from that. How traumatic are all of this experience, so that it helps people understand?
Okay, so to answer that, I would say that I'm sure you must have heard stories of 12-year-olds or 15-year-olds that have committed suicide because they were raped. Now, that tells you how traumatic it is. Now, when a child goes through defilement or rape, now it's the same thing, but you know, for the law, like using the legal term, if it's under 16, I think in some states 14, I think some 13, it is called defilement. Then 16, oh, it's rape, but you know, it's actually the same thing. Now, it affects the normal thought process. It affects, it dehumanizes them. You know, there are some cases of rape or abuse between father and daughter. Now, can you, as someone that has not experienced that, try and understand how a child will feel having been raped by her father? It's hard for you to grasp. You know, it's hard for you to grope with as an outsider. How much more the victim? You know, so it is really a very traumatic experience. It tampers with the normal development of the child. It tampers with the psychological development, the brain. It tampers with the child. It tampers with emotional stability. So it is really very traumatic. A lot of them begin to experience post-traumatic stress disorder. You have nightmares, you have withdrawal syndromes, you have anxiety syndromes. You know, it just affects their psyche, it affects their person. You know, and so some of them then, of course, later on in the years, there's a vacuum. They can't understand the world. They're bitter against the world. They feel an injustice has been done to them. They cannot speak out. There's so much, you know, pent up. And so they find an outlet for it. And before you know it, there is drugs, of course, readily available for them. You have alcohol readily available for them. And before you know it, they begin to, you know, it's cascading. They begin to spiral all the way down. You know, so you have that. And then for some of them, they're just fed up with life and they just want to leave the world. You know, they actually then begin to consider taking their life. So it is a very traumatic experience. The truth about it is we can only speculate from outside based on what we have seen them do, you know, after the experiences that they've had. But no one except the person that's really experienced it can really be able to say that this is it. Usually, ask any victim of rape to recount the ordeal. It's usually almost as fresh. If they're not in tears, you discover that in between they take pauses. That's to let us know that each time they think about it, or each time they see situations similar to them that brings back the memory, they actually show that. That tells us how impactful it can be on their life now, even going forward, whether it is fresh. And I say there is no time that recounting the ordeal of rape or assault, there is really no time that it is easy, whether it is fresh whether it is stale, whether it is very stale, or very, very, very stale. As long as you go back in that time to remember. In fact, so for some experience, mental, I can't remember the word, but out of shock, the brain literally just, will I say, forgets that experience. Like the brain just shuts down, shuts that part, and they can't even remember except when you need to get them to go back to it for the process of healing. That's how traumatic it happens. So when rape happens, it affects the normal functionality of the brain, and since the brain coordinates a lot of things that we do, it's like that's our essence to a large extent. That means it affects the core of our humanity when that happens to us.
Now, who are those that should be at the forefront of those fights against gender-based violence?
I say everybody. Yeah, because it starts from the home. So I'll begin to, give, as best I can, let's share it. It's the national cake now. Okay. So let's share it. Now, the biggest chunk of it goes to the parent. Because the truth about it is, the family is the first encounter or contact the child has. And it's the responsibility of the parents to protect their children. I say that parenting is synonymous with availability. There is no child that asked to be born. So whether it was a mistake, whether it was, or whatever reason, it was not planned, it was, was not the time, whatever reason, the child is here because you brought about the child. And so when that happens, I think it's very important for parents to begin to rise up to the responsibility. Parenting is hard. Yes, let's know that it's hard. It's not easy. Sacrifices are, you're hungry, you just want to eat, but you need to attend to your child. It is difficult to parent a child. Let's not assume that it's going to be easy. So maybe if we go into it already with that mindset, it will help what our expectations are going to be. Now, parents need to be available for their children. So parents need to be alive to their responsibilities. Parents need to know their children. When you're not even available, when something is changing, you wouldn't even be able to tell the difference. If your child has been bullied in school, if your child, is being groomed for abuse, because, sometimes it does not just happen. Sometimes it takes a while. There's a process. The child is identified. The child is, being warmed up to before the actual abuse, eventually happens. But if you're not the kind of parent that's available, that converses with your child, that educates your child, I bring it first to the table of the parents. Parents need to be friends with their children. They need to educate. We need to forget all this. I say it, our reality says that we talk to our children, give them sex education. If you have a problem with the word sex as education, call it body safety education. I say it every time, but educate your children. Talk to them. They cannot be too trusting. There are things that they shouldn't do. Nobody is allowed to touch them. Those are conversations that they should have with their parents. Conversation around trust, conversation around love. Because a lot of times we mistake trust and love, and then a lot of our young ones fall into problem, assuming that they love this person now because this person loves them, the person cannot hurt them, or they trust this person. And from the position of trust, they get predisposed to becoming abused. So parents, yes, need to be very available for their children. That's one. Then the society. It comes together. It's not just the parents. Now, the Yorubas will say it takes a mother to birth a child, a mother births a child, but it takes, 100 mothers to actually raise that child. So you see there's a child that there's a brother or a sister that's always calling a child, and you notice that they're always alone together. Don't just say the mother is not my friend. The mother, we're not on speaking terms, or, it's not my business. No, it's your business, because I say it everywhere that I have the opportunity. You don't know who your child is going to be friends with. You don't know who your child is going to end up with in the nearest future. And the effect of rape and abuse goes into the future. Now, marriages are affected, marriages are destroyed, marriages are, are destroyed, are tampered with, or go into problem as a result of childhood experiences that, the partners in the marriage have had that were not able to, didn't get closure or healing before they got into the marriage. So you don't know who your child is going to be with. So it's important that as a people, as society, we speak up against it. We become knowledgeable about it. We protect, we talk what we say. I talk about the Ochana case. I say that somebody somewhere must have seen or must have sensed something, but they kept quiet because it was not one-off. Now it comes to the government. Now with the government, I say that we need to have like that one-stop center. We need to have a health, a care center where victims of abuse or rape can easily just walk up to, irrespective of your status. We've had cases that because they didn't have money, or they think because they don't have money they're not going to get justice or they're not going to get help. There's been cases where we've heard where they, you know, they didn't have money to open the case file, you know, at the police station, and the case was struck out, or the police do not have money for fuel to go to, you know, all kinds of cases have done. But if we have a one-stop center, whether it is true or not, all of those things will be able to deal with them. A number that people can call, a toll-free number that they can call when, you know, abuse happens. And there are people that swings into action immediately, that give them all the support, all the help that they need to get. And, you know, of course, ensuring that our justice system, ensuring that our law enforcement agencies are together. And again, the CSOs, that's the NGOs, have a part also to play in this. We've been doing a lot, you know. It's been before now, it's almost been as if it's the CSOs that are taking the front stage, you know. We've been doing a lot, and then we also need to coordinate so that we do not have duplication of roles. Again, the media, and I also bring, well, not as big as the family's chunk, maybe not as big as the government's chunk, but also a large chunk of it goes to the media. Because for a society that develops, the media sets the agenda to a large extent. And I think that it becomes a responsibility of the media to begin to look at these issues. Let's reorientate our people. Let's change the perception. Let's change the mindset of people. Let's inform people about these things. People come from the position of ignorance to talk about some of these things. Why didn't she talk for the past 20 years? If people are informed, if we continue to, I say, at least every station should have a day in the week where they talk about those societal issues, looking at reforming, you know, our culture base, our value system, and all of that. When we're big on this, how did we reduce discrimination with HIV? We had a lot of advocacy. The media was big on it. The media was strong on it. And so I bring it to the table of the media. The media should be strong on GBV. There should be a lot of advocacy. There should be a lot of, you know, CSR jingles that says in all languages, when this happens, there are a lot of CSOs that can, you know, offer the help, you know, collaborate together to make this happen. You know, so when this happens to you, it's supposed to just a 1 minute jingle, you know, and then everything is out. People are informed, people know what to do pattern. Our religious bodies also need have their role. Let them be accountability. You know, that is also important. So like I said, it's everybody coming together. We all need to come together as a people to actually do something to end the prevalence of gender-based violence.
Okay, we take a break right now. We're back with more discussions on gender-based violence. Violence, and of course I'm sure that you're beginning to understand what it takes for people who are vulnerable to be abused, and you're learning one or two things to do when issues like this arise. We're still in the point of those that should be in advocacy of this, and you were talking about it's been a large chunk. Everyone grabbing their own parts.
Yeah, so I think I stopped before we went on break at the table of the religious leaders. I think it's also very important for our religious leaders to have people that they are accountable to. It's also very important that our religious leaders do not make their followers, as best as I can say, vulnerable. You know, we usually have that position of many gods. And you know, my father taught me something, and I would never forget it. He says to me that men of God are first men, and they remain men. If not, their name along the line change to God of God. So they are men of God. So if they are men of God across whatever religion, it means they are still men. And if they are men, it means they have like passions, like we do. It means that they have their moments of weaknesses. So let's not, have that mindset and say, okay, because he's an imam, he's a bishop, then is righteousness personified. I don't think there's anybody human that has that capability of, expressing that much of righteousness or, right living or morality without any dent whatsoever. So we need to come to that point. Again, so that brings it. And then again, we look at our schools. It's important for schools, our education. What is the quality of education? It's important that we need to look at what we put into our curriculum. We need to look at what we teach our children. Can we address these issues as topics? We need to begin to discuss some of these issues. Can we have a research, that actually looks at what the perception of the children themselves that have been, that have been victims, or, what do they think? What do they think would have prevented it from happening to them? How do they think themselves that they could have protected themselves or avoided that from happening to them? And again, I'll say that, as I bring that to a wrap, let us as a people begin to look at how we raise our boys. Our boys, I said it earlier that they are also victims, that we have this number of crazy men, permit me to use that word, tells us that they have been disturbed as boys, as children. So we need to look at how we raise our boys. Do we not raise our boys to be superior just because of their gender? Do we not give our sons sense of entitlement? He can take anything because he's a boy. Do we not, make our boys unable to understand and receive love? Do we not make our children, our boys, too hardened? Now a boy falls and we say he's crying, and then you say to him, why are you crying like that now? Don't you know you're a boy? Boys don't cry. And I use that as the easiest analogy. I say boys cry. They're children, so please let them cry when they want to cry. Let's stop bringing up our children in a particular way because of the gender. No, let's give affection. Who says boys don't need affection? They are children, for crying out loud. Now, how can a boy that does not receive or did not receive affection grow up to be a man to be compassionate? Now look at the senator's case. No, you can't give what you don't have. So you must have started as a boy. Now if a boy witnesses a lot of violence, it's okay for you to be, as a man, the show of your strength is, in the impact of your fist. If that's how we bring our boys, then we're not ready to put an end to gender-based violence. So all of us, let's have conversations with our children. Let's be there for them. Schools, churches, mosques, government, everybody come together to put an end to gender-based violence in Nigeria.
All right, thank you very much, Mrs. Ibukuro Teshile.
Thank you
for coming to the studios. Like I said earlier, she's the founder of Hope for Second Chance Foundation. And of course, you've been told gender-based violence is a no-no, and we all have our roles to play to fight against gender-based violence so that we can have a better nation in every ramification. That's the much we'll be able to take on the show this morning. Do join us again tomorrow for another interesting episode. My name is Adiola Adigoke.